very prominent startups. Let's listen to Alexey about 10 numbers every startup should remember.
Thanks for the introduction, and actually I'm happy to be here. So my presentation is about 10 things about finance every startup needs to know to get right for success. But as a way of introduction, just a few words about why I am speaking here. You may have heard about Deloitte as a largest global consultancy firm serving largest corporates, having like 32 billion revenue, 200,000 people all over the world in more than 200 countries. But you might be surprised that our global practice in the Silicon Valley, in Israel, in Asian countries is very much focused on supporting the startups, supporting technology companies to grow big, and support them at every stage of development. And during the last year and a half, the company is supported by our Israeli practice, which serves as a kind of example for us. They've raised more than $2 billion. And that's the experience we try to replicate here in Ukraine, Belarus, and the CIS. And I'm a director with the corporate finance with Deloitte. And also I'm leading the technology practice across all the functions, across all the practices within Deloitte in Ukraine and Belarus. So that's why I'm speaking here. So the first number for a startup to know at an early stage where nothing is yet ready, when there is just an idea and validation of that idea, the first very important number is the potential market size. And at the point of validating the idea, it's very important to have at least initial assessment of how do you see the market for your product. How can you assess that? What the number of users, what the amount of spendings that your product can achieve. And that's the very initial things which you need to know at the time of birth. At the next stage, when you have validated the idea and you are trying to do a minimum viable product, an MVP, a number of companies, they just spend money without a vision of how much do they need, what is the burn rate, how much do they spend. And this is really important to know because we speak to many companies, many startups, and help them to establish a proper cost control system. Help them with an ideas of cost cutting things on about where to not spend money. What are ways to decrease your burn rate? Because it's very important for initial stage where you don't have proper funding, you don't have significant bank account to support you during half a year or year. The next thing, when you have a minimum viable product, when you have team in place, it's time to think about your equity strategy and how you would retain your key talents within the team. Which share would you be ready to sell to angel investor or initial stage investors at seeding stage or first rounds? So it's time to think about equity strategy and how would you like your company to grow, which percentage of equity, which equity rights you would be able to retain and to give to investors. The next thing, when you have minimum viable product, when you have traction, when you have customers already, you need to understand what is actually your dollar traction, how much money customers bring to you, how to measure it. Because in many technologies, there are different ways and different sorts of operating measures, like number of customers, number of likes, number of shares, number of like cryptocurrencies or things you can exchange for money. And you need, at a time when you have initial customers, you need to establish a way to track your dollar revenues and to understand how much do you earn on each customer, how much the customer can potentially bring to you. The next thing, when you already have a marketing strategy, when you have a product go-to-market strategy, when you have, for example, installations for application or whatever, assess what is the cost of getting a new customer and assess the lifetime value of a customer. And based on these numbers, obviously you can be able to think about the strategy. Do you need high lifetime value of a customer but few of them, or you can decrease lifetime value of a customer but expand the product, expand the number of customers. That's one of the key financial metrics you need to use for taking business decisions. Obviously not the only ones, but from financial perspective, they're probably one of the key numbers. And your startup grows, and it goes to school now. So after it goes to school, it needs to understand what is the break-even point, so called BEP. What is the point when you start earning money rather than spending and investing into a product and customer acquisitions? Try to model it. Try to get the vision and communicate this vision to investors, shareholders, other stakeholders. That brings some clarity, some vision, and helps you to realize the idea. At the next stage, when your company has grown big, when it has entered a number of different markets, when your product is sold in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, in the CIS, in United Kingdom, in the United States, it's time to think about the proper structure of your financial flows, about setting up a holding company, holding your IP rights, about operating companies in the selected locations to be close to customers, to provide proper level of service, but at the same time to be tax efficient. Because if you look at the major like technology players, there are a lot of papers, a lot of articles about their tax structure, and like the story about a multi-billion company which borrowed like significant amount of money just to pay taxes in one jurisdiction, but at the same time having much more money in another jurisdiction and not being able to transfer them for tax reason. That's so when your company grows big, think about proper structure and proper ways to move your finance from one company to another. Again, when your company grows big, it's not about an Excel spreadsheet where you look and monitor your like $100 or $1,000 revenues and costs. It has grown to a number of like hundreds of employees, different markets, different entities. And it's time to think about setting up proper financial reporting and proper controls over the financial reporting in each of jurisdictions, in each of entities across the markets. So when your company is growing big, when you have already external investors, you need to produce good reports to show them performance, to show them how the company is growing according to your plans. And these reports should be like English language. So everyone needs a common basis to understand them, like US GAAP or international financial reporting standards. There should be a common framework which everyone will be able to understand. At the mature stage, when you are thinking about external financing, like debt financing or bond financing, you will obviously be required to issue audited financial statements to bring additional credibility to your numbers and be able to show them to interested parties like the potential investors, banks, regulatory authorities, and other stakeholders. It's not an easy process. You need to be well prepared to get the auditor on board and be able to support your numbers with the proper documentation, with the proper level of controls and internal reporting. And as an example, we are currently in a discussion with one of the technology companies, startups. They have like $5 million revenue a year, something like this. They have already successfully completed several rounds with an external investors, and for this year they need to produce first-time audited financials. And we had already several discussions with them, and it was a surprise for them to understand that they need at least like 3 to 6 months to get prepared for audit only. So it's an important process when you are growing big. And actually, at a later stage, when you are going to exit, the important thing to think is valuation, how much your company is worth and how much investors will be ready to pay for it. Obviously, in technology, traditional valuation methods do not work. There was recently a very interesting article on Bloomberg, I think, about how valuation works in technology and in IT businesses. And actually, the conclusion was that it only depends on how many investors you collect in one room and how many of them raise their hands when you just say a number like 100 million or 500 million. And when you say 1 billion, I want 1 billion for my company, and there is just one investor raising his head, that's the valuation. And that's actually how it happens for technology companies. So thank you for attention. I'm happy to answer questions now or later at networking event. I really hope it was useful for you and your companies will be successful. So questions? Okay. Thank you very much for attention. So until the next speaker is coming, I'm still ready to answer questions, if you have.
David. Okay, give me a couple of seconds. I will find David and bring him here, okay?
I have a question, actually two questions. First is, what is best places for tax optimization by your mind, and what do you think about Belarus as place of registration of startup?
Well, probably I'm not the very right person to ask about it because I'm not a tax person. From the experience and from the discussions we had with a number of companies, it actually depends on market you are targeting. Because for a company which is selling in European Union, that would be one jurisdiction. If you are selling to Asia, it would be like Hong Kong or another entity. Holding companies for local startups are usually set up in Cyprus, or recently there is a trend of setting up companies working with the European Union in Estonia. They have very easy registration, and they have a lot of e-government, like e-governance services, and we have seen several young companies registering there, and they did like it, actually. So it depends on type of your business and markets you are targeting at, and the IP rights you want to secure. That's the basis for tax structuring decisions. Well, about Belarus, it's a good place to start technology business, and that's why actually I'm here. I'm like exploring this area. We know about a number of government initiatives like the technology parks, and it looks that for the companies who are being set up there, it's quite comfortable location, and that's nice for the start. So appreciate this. We don't have such in Ukraine yet. Thank you. Thank you for question.
So we're sorry.